Assalamu alaikum. Today we are going to start with lecture number 20, and so far we covered in 19th lecture and 18th we covered payment for ecosystem services, which was more of an economic topic, and just going to give you a quick recap what we have covered in that lecture so that your memory is fresh and we come across with a new topic that we are going to start today. Well, PES, we talked first in theory that why ecosystem services are important, and then we talked about different countries, what are the cases and where it is being done practically and how good they have been so far. Then we talked about that how do we identify the environmental services, in which we have the demand side and the supply side. If you remember, there were 4 questions that we asked that we have to see in the demand side and 4 questions for the supply side. Later on, how do you charge the service users? What are the economic tools that we can apply in terms of getting the monetary expressions for the service users? And then in terms of your payment, your service providers, what kind of mechanisms are to be employed to get the money, or what kind of money services you are giving it to the service providers. So one is users and another one is service providers. Now we are going to establish about the institutional framework, that what kind of framework is required. If you remember, there was one governance, one technical, one for the financing, one for the contracting. So it was 4 boxes that we talked about, and we said that, well, these are the roles and responsibilities of these people and how they are going to manage, what kind of people are required. For example, in one portion for the financial mechanisms, we required these MBAs, these accountants, and in terms of contracting we required these agents. And when we are talking about the technical side, we asked for the analysts, that what are the services, what kind of services, how do you measure them, and for the negotiation, for the administration, for the governance part, we required the stakeholders. This was basically whenever we are trying to make one framework for this payment for ecosystem services, these 4 quads are very important. And then monitoring. Monitoring is there to establish or to make sure that whatever we are doing, we are not deviating from the desired objectives. And in this way, the whole PES was summed up, that how it is impacting the livelihood, how it is impacting the poverty. Is there any good thing about PES, or it's just another sham that we are doing? But yes, so far we induced from all the case studies that we have gone through that PES is a good tool in involving community and in making the sustainable environmental regeneration by its own, without these GEOs, without these NGOs, without the donors. So that was something about the last lecture. Today, another interesting topic, and I always love it, and it's very much contemporary and you can see it all around, and some new techniques what are happening in USA, in Europe, and then what is happening in Pakistan. That is where you can find that even in terms of practice how far we are, and why countries call us as the developing countries. So therefore, let's move on to the next one, and today we are going to talk about land use planning. A very important concept, very valid concept, and we would see by first going through the major concepts and by what are the new challenges, new trends happening in land use planning, and then ultimately apply it to Pakistan. So that is the first part, is the concept part, right? And let's see whether we can apply it in Pakistan or not. When we come to the definition, or when we come to that how to introduce land use planning, then land use planning may be also known as the growth management. ठीक है, it can be a comprehensive planning, right? And it is basically to guide community development, that how the communities need to develop. It helps people to create a vision of how to provide resources in the future. So it's a visioning exercise. It's just like I think there's only one planned city in Pakistan, that is your Islamabad, right? So how do you see that one piece of land can be utilized for future generations? And a lot of people have worked on it, and I'll show you, if I have time, a very interesting presentation. And this is one of a very renowned professor at New York University. And you would see that how this thing has evolved, and now what are the new techniques that we are using in land use planning, and how the rights, responsibilities, the zoning, and what kind of mechanism or models are coming in today. But first, let's go on the theoretical part. Over here, we have already covered, and we had a very comprehensive lecture in terms of the planning process. And in planning process, the first thing as a planner we do is that you gather the data. You gather the data, you gather the information, and this is with reference to your land use planning. You get all that. What is the geographic spread of your region? In Pakistan, there is plains, there are mountains, there are deserts, so many things, and you gather all the information. Then you have your goal formation. Now in goal formation, what you're doing, you are trying to see what are your end objectives, and you form a strategy how to achieve it. That is the second part, that is your goal formation. The third part is my land use decision, because I have all the information, I have my goals, and now I have to decide that what, where, when, how this decision has to be made with reference to the land use. And we already covered this the part of land use decision making model, right? Then you get the information, you get the inputs from the public, that what people think about it, whether I should be making a big mega city mall, or I should devote this for the residential purpose, for the business purpose, or I should keep this forest as it is. So these are the different inputs that you are getting from the people, from the public. And it's a public hearing process where you suggest some mechanism, and then it's a public discourse. Then you have an action plan, whatever output comes from that public action, whatever come from that for all the information that you have gathered, now you make an action plan. You want to make those goals to be achieved, you want to make those things to happen, so you have an action plan. And while you're having an action plan, then you evaluate that whatever things you have said, whatever information you have given, whether it is applicable or not, whether you have achieved them or not, and if you have achieved it, whether it is the way you conceived it in the goals or not, right? So those are the 6 steps when we are doing the land use planning. Now there's a term called urban sprawl. एक और बड़ी interesting बात है कि whenever we think about the land use planning, we just toss it to the rural part. जब हम environmental problem की बात करते हैं, we think that it's always in the wilderness, it's always in the rural part. No, urban areas को हमने हमेशा ही neglect किया है. Climate change का impact देखना है, हम बड़े बड़े nature के पहाड़ों की बात करेंगे, water की बात करेंगे, but we don't look into the cities. What is happening over there? So urban side is also part of the planning. Urban cities, ये जो mega cities जो create हो रही हैं, they also impact the environment. They also, वहाँ पे water के issues होते हैं, वहाँ पे भी air के issues होते हैं. It's not that it's just fulfilling the Pakistan dream or the American dream that you just go in the city and it will be problem free. There are a lot of problems, and whatever actions we are taking in the cities, that also impact the human lives, that also impact the poverty, that also impact the livelihood of people. ठीक है? So the goals should not be कि जी natural environment है तो it is only in the forest, यानी it is always in the rural part. No, always think holistically कि उसने urban parts में भी हमने देखना होता है. So urban sprawl is a term which you can easily understand. Urban is the urban, and sprawl एक नेगेटिव कॉनोटेशन देता है. सो व्हाट इट इज कैरेक्टराइज्ड बाय अनमैनेज्ड, that you haven't managed it, it's not planned, it is unmanaged widespread growth. यानी आपकी सिटीज एकदम मशरूमिंग करने लग पड़ी. टॉक अबाउट कराची, टॉक अबाउट लाहौर, टॉक अबाउट कोयटा, टॉक अबाउट रावलपिंडी, इस्लामाबाद, like all these cities, what they were in 20 years back and what they are now in 20 years after, it's not the same. The structures are not the same. The things have changed radically. When I talked about nature, कि जहाँ पे environment इतना radically change हो रहा है, वहाँ पे ये भी चीज़ें change हो रही हैं. अब water shortage है, poverty ज़्यादा है, crime ज़्यादा है. So things have literally changed. Earlier there was no barrier towns. Earlier there was no DHA societies. And now, जब ये societies बन गई, mushroom कर गई, now people have started thinking, why there are no trees? अब environment का यहाँ पे it's not environmental friendly. Gated communities का concept नहीं था. So now we say कि ये एक urban sprawl हो गया है. Why? Because it is characterized by unmanaged widespread growth. Number two, they are considered unattractive. ठीक है ना. अब जहाँ पे planned cities आती हैं, वहीं पे कुछ जब एकदम mega structures इस तरह increase होने लग पड़े आपकी urban structures, तो वहाँ पे हम कह देते हैं they are unattractive. Number three, they are environmentally and economically unstable. They are unsustainable. ठीक है. So therefore urban sprawl अगर हमारी cities में हो रहा है या अगर हमारे geographic boundaries के अंदर हो रहा है, that is not good for us, right? Now, what are the ecological effects? जब हम ecological effects की बात करते हैं तो let's see कि number one, there is a destruction of wildlife habitat because we are growing unplanned, we are not thinking about anything. So ये क्या हो रहा है कि आपकी वाइल्ड लाइफ क्या हो जाती है? It comes under threat. After the threat to the wildlife, जो कि बहुत important है कि एक का important जो part है आपके इकोसिस्टम का, वो अंडर थ्रेट आ जाता है. जो आपको पहले वाइल्ड लाइफ आपको नजर आई थी, नाउ इट्स नोवेयर नियर. सो उसके क्या हो जाता है, आपकी टोटल फूड चेन, फूड वेब, ये सारी डिस्टर्ब हो जाती हैं. सो सबसे बड़ा जो अर्बन स्प्रॉल का जो थ्रेट है, दैट इज योर थ्रेट टू द वाइल्ड लाइफ. सेकेंड, नॉन नेटिव स्पीशीज की इंट्रोडक्शन हो जाती है. नॉन नेटिव स्पीशीज होती हैं जो उस एरिया में स्पीशीज ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्ट नहीं कर रही होती हैं, बट विद दिस growth in these structures, with this growth, तो कुछ non-native जो कि बाहर की species होती हैं, they start coming here because maybe the conditions which we are now providing with these new structures, they are conducive for them. So आप कई uninvited species आपके वहाँ पे आ जाती हैं. Then water pollution का risk. Water is a major issue, and in the upcoming lectures we will be talking about this water policy, water issues कौन-कौन से हैं पाकिस्तान के हवाले से. But water की pollution highest हो जाती है. Like now you have these क्या उनको कहते हैं, there are filtration plants, there are water filters, there are tablets in the markets के जो water pollution को आप करेंगे. जब आपकी city इतनी ज़्यादा हो जाए तो आपका वाटर का इशू, वाटर स्कार्सिटी आपकी बढ़ जाती है. ठीक है. सो देयर इज इशू ऑफ ड्रिंकिंग वाटर, देयर इज इशू ऑफ वाटर सिक्योरिटी nowadays in these rural and urban structures. Later on we talk about the increased potential for flooding, क्योंकि they are unplanned, इसलिए हमने flooding की कोई प्लान किया ही नहीं होता, हमने अपने structures को इस तरीके से बनाया ही नहीं होता. So there is much more threat for flooding. As I said, एक रेवोल्यूशन आया था पाकिस्तान के भी अंदर आया, साउथ एशिया के भी अंदर आया, एंड दैट को वाज नोन एज द ब्लू रेवोल्यूशन. ब्लू रेवोल्यूशन कॉल्ड फॉर कि जी आप अपने मैनग्रोव फॉरेस्ट जितने भी हैं, यू जस्ट कट दोज मैनग्रोव फॉरेस्ट्स एंड व्हाट यू डू इज दैट यू ग्रो these shrimp farming up करें. Shrimp farming was much more profitable, it was much more economical, it was just to you eliminate all these cut all these mangrove forests and turn them into shrimp farming. So shrimp farming हमने start की, Pakistan was also one of the countries, and we started off and we gained a lot of this revenue from that, and later on आपकी जो vulnerability थी वो बढ़ गई because there was no mangrove forest और आपके floods ज़्यादा डिस्ट्रक्शन करने लग पड़े, बिकॉज there is a theory behind it कि अगर आपके मैनग्रोव फॉरेस्ट हों तो it acts like a buffer, it acts like a wall against protection against floods. So है ही नहीं, अब सिर्फ आप shrimp farming कर रहे हैं, so that was a concept of weak sustainability, that for short term profit you have given up the long term benefit. So then again blue revolution khatam hua, and the World Bank gave, it was actually the World Bank who gave the money कि जी आप blue revolution start करें and start the shrimp farming, and again the same institution gave another loads of money कि नहीं, we have found out कि जी mangroves are very important for fisheries, mangroves are very important for your for the protection of these habitat, so therefore start growing the mangroves. And again the next revolution came, and we again finished all the shrimp farms and we started growing the mangrove forest. So इस किस्म के policy failures आपके होते हैं. So there'll be an increase in flooding because of this urban sprawl, and there's an increase of wildfires. अगर हम इसको global scale पे देखें तो ऑस्ट्रेलिया वगैरह में इस किस्म की wildfires आपकी लगती रहती हैं. Those were the environmental. Now let's go to the socio-economic effects. Socio-economic effects में क्या आ जाती है? Increased community costs for roads, school and emergency services. अब आपने एक वो जो है कम्युनिटी को दूसरी कम्युनिटी से अगर लिंक करना है तो आपकी कॉस्ट्स आपकी बढ़ती जाएंगी फॉर द रोड्स, फॉर स्कूल्स, क्योंकि आपने नए स्कूल भी बनाने हैं, नई रोड्स भी बनानी, तो वो आपकी एडेड कॉस्ट है बिकॉज इट्स अनप्लान्ड. नाउ यू हैव टू फाइंड अ वे टू कनेक्ट दीज द टू. Then increased need for automobile, increased noise, traffic and pollution. Very much obvious that okay, जितने ज़्यादा आप housing societies को दूर बनाते जा रहे हैं, जैसा कि we have seen the trend in Lahore, in Islamabad, in Karachi, areas which were not even closer to cities, areas which were far away, we are now developing them. अब जब आप उनको develop करें, the only accessible point are your own personal cars. So demand for cars are going to increase. Cars की demand अगर increase होती है, now you need roads, तो आपकी noise pollution होती है, आपकी air pollution होती है, so many negativities because of that. Then there is isolation of young, poor and elderly. जितना आप ज़्यादा दूर जाते जा रहे हैं इन पॉकेट्स में, तो what is the frequency of you meeting your relatives? It's very less. Now, and a very valid question, a very valid answer or comment from you people would come that now we have technology. Now you just open your Skype, you just open your video phone and you people can talk. So distances you don't need to go into physical proximity. But again, this digital tools, they are not just helping you out. वो जो आपके soft words होते थे, जो आपको soft touch होता था, which you would just feel the warmth of your grandmother, you can't feel it from your smartphone. So therefore, ये जो isolation है human beings की, ये ज़्यादा increase होती जा रही है because of these urban sprawls. And then increased costs and difficulty of providing public transit. Public transit की फिर ज़रूरत पड़ती, then you put pressure on the government that okay, there's no public transport over there. So government को अपना extra route लगाना पड़ता है, सारा कुछ करना पड़ता है. So that is an extra expense on part of the government. Then another impact would be the loss of agricultural and forestry jobs and traditional land practices. ये तो खत्म हो गए. I'll share the case study of Sugar Valley also. That was also one of my research works. So Sugar में क्या हुआ that now what जो हमारा एक demographic trend कह लें या हमारा snob effect कह लें, that we want to live in independent houses. Independent houses means कि आपके जो family units है वो क्या होने लग पड़े हैं, disintegrate होने लग पड़े हैं. Now you are not living in joint families. ठीक है, now you are living in your independent houses. जब independent houses करने हैं तो land आप कौन सा use कर रहे हैं, जो आपका agricultural land होता था, now you have started constructing houses on those lands. अब क्या हुआ कि जो farmer था या जो आपने कभी आदमी रखा होता who would help you in farming, उसकी job अब खत्म होगी because now we have constructed a house on that agricultural land. जो forest होता था which you used to own sometime, now it's no more because you have cut all the trees and now you are making your own accommodation on that. अब आपके वहीं पे वो sanitary issues आ जाएंगे. ठीक है, आपकी किस तरीके से वो infrastructure नया बनेगा, how the water flow is going to work, where the dirty water is going to do, all that kind of issues are going to arise with these new unplanned housing problems. Now increase ordinance and regulating logging noise odors. अब आपका regulation, आपका legislative way pressure पड़ेगा that okay you need to have some new kind of laws in order to deal with the odor, in order to deal with the wastage, in order to deal with the noise pollution. So all kind of regulating ordinances have to be formed. Then loss of rural character or community sense of place. एक जो rural character होता था कि जी family bonding है, people know each other, people don't lock their houses. They know the neighbors are much more closer as compared to your family blood relatives. So that thing is missing out. ठीक है, वो वाली चीज़ अब खत्म होती जा रही है. And there is reduced walkability. Now people don't walk. People would go क्योंकि अब फासले ज़्यादा हो गए. People would prefer walking on cars. आपके health issues आ जाएंगे. You will become obese. You will become fat. So these are the long term. These are socio-economic जो कि we don't see. किया क्या है? We have just made a new housing community. So these are the effects that we are going to have. Second concept क्या आ जाता है after the urban sprawl? We go for smart growth. What is smart growth? हर community उसको different तरीके से define करती है. Now these are the foreign concepts that I'm saying, but in today's architecture, when you're studying urban planning, rural planning, land use planning, ये वाली terminologies अब use हो रही हैं, ठीक है? So remember what is meant by smart growth. Smart growth क्या होता है? It promotes economic development, social equity, environmental stewardship, to improve overall quality of life. So when they say कि जी आप planning किस तरह कर रहे हैं या you are the natural resource planner, so always remember that okay I am going for smart growth. Smart growth में क्या आप कर रहे हैं? Number 1 economic development, number 2 social equity, and number 3 environmental stewardship. तीनों variables फिर से आ गए, environmental, economic and social. What are the basic principles of this smart growth? अब इसमें क्या है? All the levels of government play important role in creating and implementing policies that support smart growth. Smart growth अगर आपने करनी है जब तक government की intervention नहीं होती, जब तक government की participation नहीं होती, remember this goal is almost unachievable क्योंकि it is a top down. Government ने कोई standards, कोई rules बनाएगा which needs to be implemented that people follow the economic development, the social equity and the environmental stewardship, तब आपका होगा. So government की participation is very necessary. Then comes the development should conserve and enhance. क्या करे conserve और क्या करे enhance? Environmental and cultural resources. You would see कि हमारा जो culture है that is yes, that's what I wanted to hear. Our culture is no more in the pure form. ठीक है? I had one thing that number of my classroom students, they would say, well, that is not culture, that is globalization. कि globalization से हमारा culture एक नई form ले रहा है. But what do you think that we as nation, we as people have forgotten our language? If you see the mushrooming of English medium schools in the past 30 years, it has become a trend. Now I don't see कि जो Urdu medium school भी हैं, शायद government वाले, but now we are promoting. Now that is not our language. If I speak Pashto, if I speak Sindhi, if I speak in my local language Punjabi, if I speak Hindko or Saraiki or whatever, then these local languages are not being taught in the schools. Rather, we take pride that I am going to this XYZ school where I am taught German, where I'm taught French, where I'm taught this Chinese, because these are the millennium languages. Oh, we feel good about it. What's the good about it? When I can't even understand my language. And I had a doctoral class, and believe me when I asked them, when we are in the PhD, I asked them, okay, alaf be pe likho. Hardly, without exaggeration, 2 or 3 students wrote, otherwise all of them have forgotten, because they said, well, the last time we wrote Urdu was in our intermediate, because after intermediate we have no usage of Urdu because everything is in English. I am not against the languages, but what is the use that when your languages are going to finish out? I'll put an open question to you people, that cultural symbols होते हैं किसी भी society के, किसी भी nation के. आप अगर पाकिस्तानी या मैं अमेरिकन बात करता हूँ, लाइक स्टेइंग देयर एंड पीपल वुड से अगर ये 4 चीजें हों तो दैट इज एन अमेरिकन. बेसबॉल, शेवलेट, कोका कोला एंड हॉट डॉग. ये 4 चीजें कहीं पे भी अगर आपको नजर आ जाए, यू वुड से इट डिपिक्ट्स द अमेरिकन कल्चर. I give you a question. Tell me, what do you think about Pakistani culture? Do you have those 4 symbols? यहाँ पे we did once, I went to one exhibition, उन्होंने पाकिस्तानी culture को कैसे exhibit किया हुआ है. 4 boys were sitting and there was totally blackout. उन्होंने कहा जी load shedding is a cultural symbol. This is not how nations build up. We have forgotten and we love to give up. I would love to act in a stage play which is in English. I would love to go and visit with my children to go to a play which is in English because I don't want to teach him in the Punjabi. And yes, a valid comment absolutely is going to come from you. They are so cheap. They are so bad that family ke saath we can't sit and we can't watch these plays. Nothing to be the thing is that if you are the users, market उसी behave करती है ना, demand जिस चीज की है. My demand is to go for foreign brands, to go for English, to go for French, to go for these kind of cuisines. तो मेरे local foods तो वैसे finish हो जाएंगे ना. वही वाली बात जो I was telling you, first look at the demand side. अब जो community या जो आपके लोग हैं who are demanding that Punjabi play or who is demanding that Pashto play or who is demanding that kind of thing, that is that community, उनके लिए वो supply करते जा रहे हैं. If the upper class start or if the middle class start asking for such products, automatically आपकी growth होगी, but we have given up that. Gandhi ने बहुत एक he gave a very good, he said that I love culture, I love diversity, and I would love that these waves of diverse cultures should come into my house. I will keep my windows open, right? Let them sweep. लेकिन ये जो winds of change है, ये जो wind of culture है, ये जो wind of diversity है, इतनी strong ना हो that it should take away my home, it should blow away my house. मेरी roots इतनी तो strong होनी चाहिए that I at this level, at a graduate level, I'm unable to write my own alphabets. हरूफ तहज्जी नहीं मैं लिख सकता. Smart growth के अंदर at least we preserve the cultural values. Language is one of them. Food is one of them. Your clothing is one of them. You see कि हमारी clothing कितनी change हो गई है. Right? So therefore, when we as policymakers, when we are talking about the smart growth, let's see that okay, our cultural and environmental जो values हैं वो क्या हो, conserve हो. ठीक है? Then development should promote vitality for urban centers. ठीक है, I'm not saying urban centers are bad, urban centers are good, लेकिन उसकी importance में आनी चाहिए. Then programs and policies need to encourage vital small towns and rural areas. Just don't focus on the urban hubs. Urban hubs, ठीक है, there might be fast development, but it is not the only development. आपने rural areas को भी करना, otherwise और सारी migration आ जाएगी आपके urban hubs में. ठीक है, towns को develop करें, urban areas को develop, rural areas को develop करें, and then you would see कि कैसा आपका beautiful mix आएगा जहाँ पे environment, socio-economic variables are working in play. Then your land and infrastructure should be used efficiently. लैंड एंड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में आपके स्ट्रीट्स हैं, आपके स्कूल्स हैं, आपके हॉस्पिटल्स हैं. ये ना हो दैट आई हैव मेड द हॉस्पिटल लाइक 40 miles far away from the city or 100 miles away from the rural area. That's what is the reality. In Pakistan, I can't access any good medical center which is not far away. I have to move people. You make a survey in these hospitals, in your cities. ज़्यादा आपके urban लोग नहीं बीमार होंगे, ज़्यादा people from the rural areas are here in the city, in these hospitals for their treatment, because we don't have good hospitals in rural areas, and if we have hospitals, we don't have equipment. If we have equipment, we don't have doctors. So what kind of development we are talking about? किस किस्म की हम management या planning हम कर रहे हैं? ठीक है? Now, आपकी जो हाउसिंग चॉइसेस हैं वो क्या होनी चाहिए, should be accessible to multiple transport centers. I have seen it in New York, I've seen it in Italy, and like it's just walking by. You just walk and you can reach a bus stop. You can just walk and you can reach a subway. Is it present in Pakistan? Well, the government is trying. You can see the metro bus, but uske apne pros and cons hain. There's a group who are saying that with the new project of Islamabad, the metro bus, the temperature of Islamabad is going to increase. Why? क्योंकि आपकी iron railing लगेंगी, आपने दरख्त सारे काट दिए, अब उस iron railing का जब गर्मी में temperature होगा तो उस iron railing से आपके overall city का temperature increase हो जाएगा. What are this? Do we have any alternative for that? Let's think about it. ठीक है? Development should be considered at a regional scale. Development को हमेशा we talk about at the, you should not be thinking at a local scale or at a town level. It should be taken at a bigger level. Then land use planning should strive to promote equity. जिस तरीके से हम बात करते हैं, even in US, like we have these black communities, we should not be calling it as the Afro-American communities को बिल्कुल अलग कर लेते हैं, हार्लम का अलग एरिया अलग हो गया. Similarly, पाकिस्तान के अंदर in Lahore, in Islamabad, in these big cities, we have already made these economic classes कि जी वो इस एरिया में गरीब रहते हैं, इस एरिया में rich रहते हैं. DHA, बहरिया, these are the people for the rich and other areas are not. ये middle class के लिए इस किस्म के हमने नहीं करने, because we have to have an equity. Why can't all the neighborhoods be safe? Why can't people can't feel safe in every neighborhood? So therefore, it should promote equity. Then, one size doesn't fit all. There are a variety of approaches to approach स्मार्ट ग्रोथ. आप एक स्ट्रैटेजी लगा के सिर्फ स्मार्ट ग्रोथ नहीं कर सकते पूरे पाकिस्तान में और इन एनी वन ऑफ द सिटीज. यू नीड टू हैव टेलर इट अकॉर्डिंग टू द डिमांड्स एंड कंडीशंस. मे बी पेशावर में इट्स डिफरेंट. ठीक है, पेशावर में जो स्मार्ट सिटी हो दैट माइट बी डिफरेंट, बट इन अदर स्मार्ट ग्रोथ लाहौर की डिफरेंट होगी, कराची की डिफरेंट होगी. इवन नाउ द सिटीज आर डिफरेंट. देन हमारे जो लैंड कंजर्वेशन टूल्स होते हैं वहाँ पे एक और चीज़ आ जाती है, दैट इज नोन एज द ग्रीन स्पेस. ग्रीन स्पेस यहाँ हम उसको कहते हैं ओपन स्पेस. अब ग्रीन स्पेस क्या करती है? इट एनहांसेस फॉरेस्ट एंड हैबिटेट कनेक्टिविटी. It provides recreational opportunities and it protects or it preserves the wetlands and floodplain areas. Green space. यानी if you have been abroad, if you have seen कि जी आप जब दूर में रहते हैं तो they have a proper green. घर है लेकिन उसके इर्द गिर्द दरख्त ही दरख्त लगाए हुए हैं. There's a complete green enclave, not artificial. They're natural. Why? Green space strips that create linear parks for recreation are called greenways. अगर आप देखें pathways के साथ सीधा दरख्त ही दरख्त लगे हुए हैं, that is the greenway. अब greenway systems जो होते हैं, they can connect people, they can connect communities, countryside. It provide recreational activities and it increase public access to cultural and historical sites. That is the green. अब हमारे यहाँ पे I don't think so कि we have any example of such green space जिसको हमने बनाया हो. ठीक है, अब ग्रीन स्पेस क्या करती है? अगर आपके घर के गिर्द दरख्त ही दरख्त हैं, ठीक है, सो ग्रीन स्पेस एक्ट्स लाइक अ बफर. आपको जो बाहर की नॉइज है वो नहीं आएंगी. दैट्स व्हाई इफ यू सी द ब्रिटिश और द अमेरिकन द वे दे कंस्ट्रक्ट हाउसेस के इर्द गिर्द काफ़ी बायोडाइवर्सिटी होनी चाहिए, बिकॉज दे डोंट वांट आउटसाइड नॉइज पोल्यूशन. उसके बाद दे से कि आपका जो घर का टेम्परेचर है वो कूलिंग और हीटिंग उससे कम बिल्स उसके आते हैं, बिकॉज वो नेचुरल उसकी कूलिंग हो रही होती है. ठीक है, सो दैट्स व्हाई दीज ग्रीन स्पेसेस आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. नाउ ग्रीन सिस्टम्स क्या करते हैं? ये जो ग्रीन वे सिस्टम्स क्या कर सकते हैं? Think of it, it's an opportunity. We don't have it over here in our country. So I would say that if you have that much capital, go for such structures. It increase the property values. Jitne aap we have named them green valley, green this, green that, but maybe they're just artificial, or it's just the green paint. But what I'm saying is that when you're actually developing it, it is a long term. It's a good effort. So increase the property values, then it provide refuge and migration routes for wildlife. Wildlife का भी तो आप ख्याल रखें ना, आपने सारे दरख्त काट दिए, then what happens? Then it provides alternative transportation routes for cyclists and pedestrians. ठीक है, अब अगर आपके green waves हैं तो आप आराम से it provides ways for them. हमने तो I think cycle is just eliminating out of Pakistan. We don't have that anymore because we have these hybrids, we have these big cars, and we are just moving towards it. I hardly have seen an ad of a bicycle in the past 2-3 years in Pakistan on a television. And motorbikes, cars, they are very much there, and we don't see what is the benefit. In Thailand, at AIT, Asian Institute of Technology, everyone has a bicycle and they move from one place to another, even from professor to a student. So this is how they're doing it. In LUMS, I have heard that okay, bicycles को use किया, but it's just so close. It's such a small, छोटा सा campus है, उसके अंदर ये use कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, it's an initiative, but we feel हमारा वहाँ पे आ जाता है social जो strata है वो हमारा strata वो कम हो जाता है if you see some big shot coming on a bicycle, so that's a problem. Now it enhance economic development and tourism. जितनी greenery होगी, जितनी green space, greenways होंगे, उतने आपकी ये जो होती है tourism increase होती है. If you've been to New Hampshire in USA, that is one of the states, वहाँ पे जब autumn आती है, the people go and see the fall colors. यानी दरख्तों के जो कलर्स होते हैं, people come from England, from Europe just to see that state कि जी वो जो autumn के कलर्स हैं उनको देखने के लिए. So it enhances tourism. Then it provides close to home access to green space. You don't have to go to parks. You don't have to go to these artificial created parks because आपके पास है ये scenic beauty if you have these green spaces. Then it improves overall quality of life. Other conservation tools, maybe हमारे conservation easements हैं या land preservation agreements हैं. We can have these agreements that okay, we will preserve this land. That is again coming from top down. Government is involved. उसके बाद land acquisition programs by public agencies या non-profit organizations कि जी NGOs ने आजकल start किया, इसको हम corporate adoption भी कहते हैं. Like there are corporations who would say that okay, we take this land, we will rehab it, we will make it green, and we will conserve it, and we take the responsibility. That comes under the umbrella of your CSR, corporate social responsibility. अब क्या आ जाता है आपकी growth boundaries. Growth boundaries क्या होती हैं? These are the urban growth boundaries, are lines designated on planning and zoning maps that predict the limit of any city services. कि मैंने अपनी हदूद बंदी कर ली है कि जी ये मेरी बाउंड्री से ज़्यादा मैं नहीं ग्रो करूँगा. They define land that can be urbanized outside of the current city limits and identify rural area where development must be discouraged. That should be in our maps. Your growth boundaries कि हमारी limit यहाँ तक है, इससे हम आगे नहीं जा सकते. Do we have these growth boundaries? If you have seen just the way we are expanding our cities, we are going towards the rural areas. I doubt. Oregon की मैं example देता हूँ. 1973, Oregon is a state in United States of America. वहाँ पे 1973 के अंदर उसने सारी cities को, जितनी भी उस state के अंदर cities हैं, उन्होंने कहा जी आप अपनी growth boundaries बनाएं. Affordable housing was required to be developed within the boundary, and protective zones were to be created outside. Urban services were not provided by two houses built outside of the boundary. अब ये उन्होंने catch रखा हुआ था. The catch was कि जी अगर आप उस boundary से बाहर हैं तो we won't be providing you any of that services. That should be done in, I think, in Pakistan in such structures कि जी ये वाली हमारे zones हैं, इनके अंदर आप बस बना सकते हैं. If you go out, you are not eligible for such services. Role of technology, a very important tool in terms of your land use planning. Technology provides many tools to reduce some of the negative impacts of development. Development, जब भी word development लेते हैं, don't think it is always a positive development. It may be a negative development. जो हमारे theorists use करते हैं, there was one paper I wrote, we call it as the ugly development. कि जी, it's not that fruitful. और ये जो development है, it is actually turned into a negative effects on the human life. Now development के अंदर ये आपके कुछ tools हैं. soil है, permeable pavement है, GIS systems हैं, और कई है. There are so many tools that we are using at the moment for the purpose of these development and growth. अब आ जाता है आपका typical subdivision development. एक तो हम development अभी बात कर रहे थे, we're talking at the state level, we're talking at the nation level. Now the division level, a little bit lower. Residential subdivisions typically consist of low density, single family homes, lacking connectivity between neighborhoods. ये वाली होती हैं आपकी residential subdivisions. New subdivisions are often developed on an underdeveloped land. There are two kinds of lands. One is green field and another one is brown field. Green field वो होता है जहाँ पे कोई infrastructure ना हो अभी, कोई उसके ऊपर भी structure ना हो, that is known as green field. Brown field होता है कि existing structure के ही अंदर अगर आप कोई changes, कोई tweaking कर लें और उसी structure में आप रहने लग पड़ें, that is known as brown field. Green field is totally new. तो वो कहते हैं जी जब आपने ये subdivision development करनी होती है, prefer going for the green field sites. Drawbacks क्या हैं because of the subdivision development? Typical suburb development involves little diversity of income and thus leads to class segregation. आपकी इसमें have और have nots का gap ज़्यादा आ जाता है क्योंकि कम लोग होते हैं, they make big houses, environment के साथ भी friendly हैं, but only rich can afford that. उसके बाद the land of mixed land uses means people have to drive long distance to work and shop. जब इस तरह आप जितना isolation में जाते रहेंगे, ग्रीन फील्ड आप जितना दूर बनाएंगे उतनी ही आपको आपके फ्यूल चार्जेस बढ़ जाएंगे एंड यू हैव टू कवर लॉन्गर डिस्टेंस टू रीच योर वर्क, टू रीच दीज स्कूल्स, टू रीच हॉस्पिटल, ऑल दीज काइंड ऑफ एक्सेसरीज. देन कंजर्वेशन सबडिविजन्स आ जाती हैं. कंजर्वेशन सबडिविजन्स की क्या प्रिंसिपल्स हैं? अगर आपने कंजर्वेशन, पीछे हमने डेवलपमेंट सबडिविजन की बात की, अब हम कंजर्वेशन डेवलपमेंट की बात करते हैं. यहाँ पे हमने क्या करना है? एम्प्लॉय द स्मार्ट ग्रोथ प्रिंसिपल्स जो कि हमने पीछे पढ़े. Then create dense clusters of homes, not one, not two, dense clusters of homes. ठीक है? Leave underdeveloped green space और conservation for conservation and recreation. जो आपकी अभी underdeveloped है उसको छोड़ दें. Do not start constructing on it and let it be green for recreation. अब इनके characteristics क्या हैं? Some of the characteristics are home that are built on smaller lots are situated to maximize views of the natural area. छोटे घर होंगे तो और ज़्यादा उनका natural view होगा. Developments are walkable. जो भी आप development कर रहे हैं it should be walkable, यानी you can walk in that neighborhood. Bikeable, आप वहाँ bicycle चलाएं and may be placed close to shopping and jobs. और ऐसी जगह हो जहाँ पे you can easily shop and you can easily go to your jobs.
Take a look at this picture. It poses a very fascinating puzzle for us. These African students are doing their homework under street lights at the airport in the capital city because they don't have any electricity at home. Now, I haven't met these particular students, but I've met students like them. Let's just pick one. For example, the one in the green shirt. Let's give him a name too, Nelson. I'll bet Nelson has a cell phone. So here's the puzzle. Why is it that Nelson has access to a cutting-edge technology like the cell phone, but doesn't have access to a 100-year-old technology for generating electric light in the home? Now, in a word, the answer is rules. Bad rules can prevent the kind of win-win solution that's available when people can bring new technologies in and make them available to someone like Wilson. What kinds of rules? The electric company in this nation operates under a rule which says that it has to sell electricity at a very low subsidized price. In fact, a price that's so low it loses money on every unit that it sells. So it has neither the resources nor the incentive to hook up many other users. The president wanted to change this rule. He's seen that it's possible to have a different set of rules, rules where businesses earn a small profit so they have an incentive to sign up more customers. That's the kind of rules that the cell phone company that Nelson purchases his telephony from operates under. The president's seen how those rules worked well, so he tried to change the rules for pricing of electricity, but ran into a firestorm of protest from businesses, consumers who wanted to preserve the existing subsidized rates. So he was stuck with rules that prevented him from letting the win-win solution from helping his country, and Nelson is stuck studying under the streetlights. The real challenge then is to try and figure out how we can change rules. Are there some rules we can develop for changing rules? I want to argue that there's a general abstract insight that we can make practical, which is that if we can give more choices to people and more choices to leaders, who in many countries are also people, but it's useful to present the opposition between these two, because the kind of choice you might want to give to a leader, a choice like giving the president the choice to raise prices on electricity, takes away a choice that people in the economy want. They want the choice to be able to continue consuming subsidized electric power. So if you give just to one side or the other, you'll have tension or friction. But if we can find ways to give more choices to both, that will give us a set of rules for changing rules and get us out of traps. Now, Nelson also has access to the internet, and he says that if you want to see the damaging effects of rules, the ways that rules can keep people in the dark, look at the pictures from NASA of the Earth at night. In particular, check out Asia. If you zoom in here, you can see North Korea in outline here, which is like a black hole compared to its neighbors. Now, you won't be surprised to learn that the rules in North Korea keep people there in the dark. But it is important to recognize that North Korea and South Korea started out with identical sets of rules in both the sense of laws and regulations, but also in the deeper senses of understandings, norms, culture, values, beliefs. When they separated, they made choices that led to very divergent paths for their sets of rules. So we as humans can change the rules that we use to interact with each other for better or for worse. Now, let's look at another region, the Caribbean. Zoom in on Haiti in outline here. Haiti is also dark compared to its neighbor here, the Dominican Republic, which has about the same number of residents. Both of these countries are dark compared to Puerto Rico, which has half as many residents as either Haiti or the Dominican Republic. What Haiti warns us is that rules can be bad because governments are weak. It's not just that the rules are bad because the government is too strong and oppressive, as in North Korea. So that if we want to create environments with good rules, we can't just tear down. We've got to find ways to build up as well. Now, China dramatically demonstrates both the potential and the challenges of working with rules. Back in the beginning of the data presented in this chart, China was the world's high technology leader. Chinese had pioneered technologies like steel, printing, gunpowder. But the Chinese never adopted, at least in that period, effective rules for encouraging the spread of those ideas, a profit motive that could encourage the spread. And they soon adopted rules which slowed down innovation and cut China off from the rest of the world. So as other countries in the world innovated, in the sense both of developing newer technologies, but also developing newer rules, the Chinese were cut off from those advances. Income there stayed stagnant as it zoomed ahead in the rest of the world. This next chart looks at more recent data. It plots average income in China as a percentage of average income in the United States. In the 50s and 60s, you can see that it was hovering at about 3%. But then in the late 70s, something changed. Growth took off in China. The Chinese started catching up very quickly with the United States. If you go back to the map at night, you can get a clue to the process that led to the dramatic change in rules in China. The brightest spot in China, which you can see on the edge of the outline here, is Hong Kong. Hong Kong was a small bit of China that for most of the 20th century operated under a very different set of rules than the rest of mainland China. Rules that were copied from working market economies of the time and administered by the British. In the 1950s, Hong Kong was a place where millions of people could go from the mainland to start in jobs like sewing shirts, making toys, but to get on a process of increasing income, increasing skills that led to very rapid growth there. Hong Kong was also the model which leaders like Deng Xiaoping could copy when they decided to move all of the mainland towards the market model. But Deng Xiaoping instinctively understood the importance of offering choices to his people. So instead of forcing everyone in China to shift immediately to the market model, they proceeded by creating some special zones that could do, in a sense, what Britain did, make the opportunity to go work with the market rules available to the people who wanted to opt in there. So they created 4 special economic zones around Hong Kong, zones where Chinese could come and work and cities grew up very rapidly there. Also zones where foreign firms could come in and make things. One of the zones next to Hong Kong has a city called Shenzhen. In that city, there's a Taiwanese firm that made the iPhone that any of you have, and made it with labor from Chinese who moved there to Shenzhen. So after the 4 special zones, there were 14 coastal cities that were open in this same sense, and eventually demonstrated successes in these places that people could opt into, that they flocked to because of the advantages they offered. Demonstrated successes there led to a consensus for a move towards the market model throughout the entire economy. Now, the Chinese example shows us several points. One is preserve choices for people. 2, operate on the right scale. If you try to change the rules in a village, you could do that, but a village will be too small to get the kind of benefits you can get if you have millions of people all working under good rules. On the other hand, the nation is too big. If you try and change the rules in the nation, you can't give some people a chance to hold back, see how things turn out, and let others zoom ahead and try the new rules. But cities give you this opportunity to create new places with new rules that people can opt into, and they're large enough to get all of the benefits that we can have when millions of us work together under good rules. So the proposal is that we conceive of something called a charter city. We start with a charter that specifies all the rules required to attract the people who will need to build the city. We'll need to attract the investors who will build out the infrastructure, the power system, the roads, the port, the airport, the buildings. You'll need to attract firms who will come hire the people who move there first. And you'll need to attract families, the residents who will come and live there permanently, raise their children, get an education for their children, get their first job. With that charter, people will move there, the city can be built, and we can scale this model. We can go do it over and over again. To make it work, we need good rules. We've already discussed that. Those are captured in the charter. We also need the choices for people. That's really built into the model if we allow for the possibility of building cities on uninhabited land. You start from uninhabited territory, people can come live under the new charter, but no one is forced to live under it. The final thing we need are choices for leaders. And to achieve the kind of choices we want for leaders, we need to allow for the potential for partnerships between nations. Cases where nations work together, in effect, de facto, the way China and Britain work together to build first a little enclave of the market model and then scale it throughout China. In a sense, Britain inadvertently, through its actions in Hong Kong, did more to reduce world poverty than all the aid programs that we've undertaken in the last century. So if we allow for these kind of partnerships to replicate this again, we can get those kinds of benefits scaled throughout the world. In some cases, this will involve a delegation of responsibility, a delegation of control from one country to another to take over certain kinds of administrative responsibilities. Now, when I say that, some of you are starting to think, well, is this just bringing back colonialism? It's not, but it's important to recognize that the kind of emotions that come up when we start to think about these things can get in the way, can make us pull back, can shut down our ability and our interest in trying to explore new ideas. Why is this not like colonialism? The thing that was bad about colonialism, and the thing which is residually bad in some of our aid programs, is that it involved elements of coercion and condescension. This model is all about choices, both for leaders and for the people who will live in these new places, and choice is the antidote to coercion and condescension. So let's talk about how this could play out in practice. Let's take a particular leader, Raul Castro, who's the leader of Cuba. It must have occurred to Castro that he has the chance to do for Cuba what Deng Xiaoping did for China. But he doesn't have a Hong Kong there on the island in Cuba. He does, though, have a little bit of light down in the south that has a very special status. There's a zone there around Guantanamo Bay where a treaty gives the United States administrative responsibility for a piece of land that's about twice the size of Manhattan. Castro goes to the Prime Minister of Canada and says, look, the Yankees have a terrible PR problem. They want to get out. Why don't you, Canada, take over, run a special administrative zone, allow a new city to be built up there, allow many people to come in, let us have a Hong Kong nearby. Some of my citizens will move into that city as well, others will hold back, but this will be the gateway that will connect the modern economy and the modern world to my country. Now, where else might this model be tried? Well, Africa. I've talked with leaders in Africa. Many of them totally get the notion of a special zone that people can opt into as a rule for changing rules. It's a way to create new rules and let people opt in without coercion and the opposition that coercion can force. They also totally get the idea that in some instances, they can make more credible promises to long-term investors, the kind of investors who will come build the port, build the roads in a new city. They can make more credible promises if they do it along with a partner nation, perhaps even in some arrangement that's a little bit like an escrow account, where you put land in the escrow account and the partner nation takes responsibility for it. There's also lots of land in Africa where new cities could be built. This is a picture I took when I was flying along the coast. There's immense stretches of land like this, land where hundreds of millions of people could live. Now, if we generalize this and think about not just one or two charter cities, but dozens, cities that will help create places for the many hundreds of millions, perhaps billions of people who will move to cities in the coming century. Is there enough land for them? Well, throughout the world, if we look at the lights at night, the one thing that's misleading is visually it looks like most of the world is already built out. So let me show you why that's wrong. Take this representation of all of the land, turn it into a square that stands for all the arable land on Earth, and let these dots represent the land that's already taken up by the cities that 3 billion people now live in. If you move the dots down to the bottom of the rectangle, you can see that the cities for the existing 3 billion urban residents take up only 3% of the arable land on Earth. So if we wanted to build cities for another billion people, they would be dots like this. We'd go from 3% of the arable land to 4%. We'd dramatically reduce the human footprint on Earth by building more cities that people can move to. And if these are cities governed by good rules, they can be cities where people are safe from crime, safe from disease and bad sanitation, where people have a chance to get a job, they can get basic utilities like electricity, their kids can get an education. So what will it take to get started building the first charter cities, scaling this so we build many more? It would help to have a manual. What university professors could do is write some details that might go into this manual. You wouldn't want to let us run the cities, go out and design them. You wouldn't let academics out in the wild. But you could set us to work thinking about questions like, suppose it isn't just Canada that does the deal with Raul Castro. Perhaps Brazil comes in as a participant, and Spain as well. And perhaps Cuba wants to be one of the partners in a four-way joint venture. How would we write the treaty to do that? There's less precedent for that, but that could easily be worked out. How would we finance this? Turns out Singapore and Hong Kong are cities that made huge gains on the value of the land that they owned when they got started. You could use the gains in the value of the land to pay for things like the police, the courts, but the school system and the healthcare system too, which make this a more attractive place to live, make this a place where people have higher incomes, which incidentally makes the land more valuable. So the incentives for the people helping to construct this zone and build it and set up the basic rules go very much in the right direction. So there are many other details like this. How could we have buildings that are low cost and affordable for people who work in a first job assembling something like an iPhone, but make those buildings energy efficient and make sure that they're safe so they don't fall down in an earthquake or a hurricane? Many technical details to be worked out, But those of us who are already starting to pursue these things can already tell that there's no roadblock, there's no impediment other than a failure of imagination that will keep us from delivering on a truly global win-win solution. Let me conclude with this picture. The reason we can be so well off, even though there's so many people on Earth, is because of the power of ideas. We can share ideas with other people, and when they discover them, they share with us. It's not like scarce objects, where sharing means we each get less. When we share ideas, we all get more. When we think about ideas in that way, we usually think about technologies. But there's another class of ideas, the rules that govern how we interact with each other. Rules like, let's have a tax system that supports a research university that gives away certain kinds of knowledge for free. Let's have a system where we have ownership of land that is registered in a government office that people can pledge as collateral. If we can keep innovating in our space of rules, and particularly innovate in the sense of coming up with rules for changing rules so we don't get stuck with bad rules, then we can keep moving progress forward and truly make the world a better place so that people like Nelson and his friends don't have to study any longer under the streetlights. Thank you.
Now come land use planning in Pakistan. पीछे मैंने आपको जो concepts बताया, those were the latest concepts, those were the buzzwords that are being used when we are talking about the land use planning. Now let's see what is land use planning in Pakistan. Land use planning, वही वाली बात, the purpose of land use planning क्या है? To regulate land use in an efficient and ethical way. कि हम equity का भी ख्याल रखें, thus preventing land use conflicts, और communities में conflict ना हो, individuals में conflict ना हो. Then land use planning is land use regulations और zoning, के हम zones बना देते हैं. Zoning क्या करता है? Zoning basically regulates the activities किसकी on a given piece of land. क्या आपको बता देता है कि भी इस zone में आप ये काम कर सकते. For example, industrial zone. फॉर एग्ज़ाम्पल आपका ये जब वहाँ पे सिर्फ इंडस्ट्री लगेगी, ठीक है, दूसरी चीज़ें नहीं आ सकती. द अमाउंट ऑफ स्पेस डिवोटेड टू दोज एक्टिविटीज़ एंड द वेज द बिल्डिंग्स में बी प्लेस्ड और शेप, उसने पूरा ब्लू प्रिंट दिया होता है कि जी आपने इस जोन में ये काम आपने करना है. सो जोनिंग इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. पाकिस्तान, ठीक है, दिस इज़ द न्यू मैप एंड आई थॉट as maybe my contribution, I should not go for an English map, let's go for the Urdu map and see maybe we can read our language or not. And this is the new map where you can see we haven't used the this NWFP, we have used this Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Punjab, Sindh, Balochistan. This is my lovely country, and let's see what is happening over here. Land use plan in Pakistan for centuries, जो शुरू से ही रहा है, that has been defined either by family or tribal relationships. कि जी ये हमारा है land, ठीक है, हम काका जाई हैं, हम ये हैं, हम काका खेल्स हैं, we are this. So that was how we are. That allowed access to land on the basis of size of household and kinship. ये पाकिस्तान का land use planning रहा है. जैसे जैसे population increase की, as the population increased, the greater competition on the control of land is putting enormous pressure on these systems. ये जो हमारे indigenous systems हैं, इनके ऊपर pressure पड़ता जा रहा है with the increase in population. It is important that modern and customary land tenure systems coexist. आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि जो हमारा customary land tenure system है, that was totally bogus. No, it had its own value, it has its own strengths. उसको और जो हमारा लैंड मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम गिवन बाय द गवर्नमेंट है, इन दोनों को कोएग्जिस्ट करना चाहिए और ऐसा हो कि लोकल कम्युनिटी के लिए कंपैटिबल हो एंड दे कैन पार्टिसिपेट इन डिसीजन मेकिंग प्रोसेस एंड विच इज पर्टेनिंग टू लैंड. सो participation is important. You can't eliminate these local communities and you can just enforce your laws. That's why we need to a compatible kind of system. अगर आप पॉवर्टी रिडक्शन स्ट्रैटेजी पेपर हमारा 2003 का देखें तो इट हाईलाइट्स द इम्पोर्टेंस ऑफ योर रूरल इकोनॉमी. ठीक है, रूरल इकोनॉमी वो क्या कहता है, दैट पॉवर्टी रिडक्शन होनी चाहिए और हमारी सस्टेन्ड इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ होनी चाहिए. दैट इज़ द चैलेंज कि हम लैंड को किस तरीके से यूज़ करें. फिर we do not have equalities in our land use planning. We know that there is a lot of inequalities. हमारी टेन्योर जो टेन्योर सिस्टम है वो इनसिक्योर है. उसके बाद जो land administration का system है, that is highly complex, and the registration system imposes constraints on poor. So therefore, it's not a very good land using system. Land use planning हमारे यहाँ पे पाकिस्तान में it's very poor. Then land transactions are relatively of higher cost, and land disputes are caused by inefficient land record system. Our land record system is bogus. We do not have a computerized system. We are actually engaged in things which have been not so well prepared. Government ने the project दिया, उन्होंने कहा जी let's computerize the land system, and they call it as the e-governance project. और उसके अंदर उन्होंने क्या किया? The result after I think 1 year we got एक Excel sheet बनाएगी जिसके अंदर उन्होंने सारा record डाल दिया, and they said well it has been computerized. Now this is the state of our land use planning. How we are going to see कि जी आपकी land की disputes नहीं आएंगी, उसके बाद आपका land एक दफ़ा sell नहीं होता, that has been multiple sellers and people just go in के, और उनके जो court cases होते हैं they are long time it takes, such a long time. फिर जो आपका जो तहसीलदार होता है, he is like a DCO of the district. He has every land record and he can do anything. So as a result, land markets are thin. हमारी जो land की market है, that is very thin, and land prices are higher against potential agricultural production land. ठीक है? Now this low mobility of land, जो हमारी land की जो mobility contributes to a highly unequal distribution of land. Our land system is not equitable. इसी वजह से आपके feudal lords इतने बड़े-बड़े उनके पास lands and there is no equity into it, और आपकी livelihood opportunities भी क्या हो जाती हैं? That becomes less. Land use planning, हमारे जो challenges हैं, they are something like that. In the absence of this adequate land use planning and supporting legislation, a major barrier is sustainability of these land resources. ठीक है, हमारे land resources कोई sustainability नहीं है. उसके बाद पाकिस्तान का अगर आप प्लानिंग प्रोसेस में देख लें, उसके अंदर हमारी लैंड यूज प्लानिंग कभी टॉप एजेंडा पे आई नहीं. एंड नाउ दिस इज बेसिकली द विजनिंग कि हाउ द डेवलपमेंट इज गोइंग टू टेक प्लेस इन योर कंट्री, एंड दैट इज नॉट anywhere. Then land resources, the way we are using it, they are not adapted to the potential of land and conservation requirements. In the West, they are using this green concepts, uske baad green highways and all that, and we are not even thinking about it. And land use plans exists either at national, provincial, district, tehsil or local level. कहीं पे भी हमारे वो as such exist नहीं करते. लैंड डिग्रेडेशन पाकिस्तान के अंदर बहुत हुई है. इन द 1970s हमारा जो ट्रेडिशनल कम्यूनल प्रॉपर्टी सिस्टम था उसको हमने अबॉलिश कर दिया था, एंड वी यूज्ड एन अल्टरनेट सिस्टम ऑफ स्टेट ओनरशिप. दैट इज भुट्टोज रजीम, जब एवरीथिंग वाज बीइंग नेशनलाइज्ड, और हमने कहा जी जो अनकल्टिवेटेड लैंड है इसकी ओनरशिप किसके पास जाएगी? स्टेट के पास जाएगी, गवर्नमेंट ओन्स इट. This system is based on exclusionary principle हमने पीछे पढ़ा था, which places restriction on utilization of resources by local communities. आपने local communities को exclude कर दिया, that you can't have any kind of extraction, you can't use these resources because now they are owned by the state. State ownership policy ने क्या किया? It triggered the land degradation, क्योंकि state ने तो सिर्फ उसको अपने ownership ले ली ना, but it was not maintaining it because government control over land was weak and lacks ownership or tenure rights. No incentives for local communities to protect and utilize natural resources sustainably. And in the previous lectures जब हमने इतना बोला जी community based natural resource system, now you can see how it is going to work in Pakistan. जब local community के पास कोई incentive ही नहीं है that they can actually work upon it. What are the barriers for this? Number one barrier is your knowledge gap. There is insufficient quantitative data on current land use in the country as well as status and trends of natural resources and their utilization. We have these GIS labs of the GIS programs भी universities में सिखा रहे हैं, but we don't utilize it. We haven't even applied it. पाकिस्तान का कोई as such a detailed concrete कोई GIS information होवे, we have all the information about the land use planning. I don't have any idea about it. If you have, please do share it. There are severe deficiencies in knowledge related to land management, to rehabilitation of degraded ecosystems, sustainable agriculture and livestock production. कहीं पे I was looking into, अगर आप बाहर जाएं universities में, there are programs on urban land management, on land use planning. Do we have it over here? If we have it, they are just bookish. Because अगर होते तो we could have some really good land planners who could have got us out of this environmental chaos. The availability, the available information is scattered. Every ministry, every institution, every NGO, they work in isolation and they think that the data hai, the information that they are collecting, किसी के पास भी नहीं है, and they are not giving it as an open access. We do not share information. We just do it for our purpose. और वही information 10 साल पुरानी हो जाती है and it becomes useless. We are not an information society. We are not information sharing. We are always information hiding. I have seen while working with some of the institutions कि जी सारों के पास data होगा और सारों ने खुद ही primary research की होगी, but they don't share with anyone. If they want to share, फिर they charge it. There's no harm in charging. But what is the authenticity of the data? Right? So therefore, we have lot of knowledge gaps. अगर यही information आप open कर दें तो you would see कि हमारा policy process in terms of our natural resources will take a remarkable, मैं कहता हूँ, leap in terms of, क्योंकि हमारे पास वो information ही नहीं है. And when you talk to these institutions, you talk to these government units, they would say, well, we have all the data and we are using but they don't know how to utilize the data. And the people who know how to utilize the data, they don't want to ask for the data. So it's just a chaotic situation. Information should be free. You can see these companies like Google and all that in the US, they don't hide the information. It's open. And जितना आप information को open access देंगे, उतनी ज़्यादा आपकी development rapid होगी, because then people know what to think, then people know how to think, then people know how to use that information. But if you don't have that information, what are you planning to do? Now, coming on to the summary, land use planning is a visioning tool that helps community to guide development. ठीक है, एक planning process जो मैंने आपको 6 steps कर, the planning process involves 6 steps, 5 of which resource professionals can participate in. There are many ecological, economic, social symptoms of urban sprawl. आप अगर वो symptoms देख रहे हैं तो you can see कि जी हमारी economy में urban sprawl हो रहा है. Smart growth embodies a set of principles that improve the quality of life. ठीक है, उसके बाद one size does not fit all, तो हर किसी के लिए different आपको smart growth strategy आपको बनानी पड़ेगी. उसके बाद there are different conservation tools, कुछ publicly owned हैं, कुछ आपके conservationist easements हैं, कुछ आपके land acquisition programs हैं, जहाँ पे आपको लगता है which tool is better, apply that tool for the land use planning. Then growth boundaries, zoning is very important and that will limit the sprawling. उसके बाद technological solutions हैं, but technology के कुछ negative impacts भी development पे होते हैं. So be aware of those negative impacts. Then conservation development represents set of development practices that get to work, conserve natural areas, cluster development and promote smart growth principles. So prefer that let's make Pakistan as a smart growth country where we have social, economic and environmental goals set up all together. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our lecture for today. Next lecture will be on something really interesting, which is contemporary, which can at least make us think that what we have to do, and in terms of not just reading a course, but in terms of how we can apply or how we can start using our brain in some constructive public policy making. Till then, thank you very much.